Welcome everyone to our SMS webinar on integrating AI into business school teaching. As Johnny was referring to, I am Jia Bao from Texas A&M University, and it is my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers today who will share their firsthand experiences on their actual applications of AI into business school teaching. And we here have Marcin Vorkovich from ASEC, who will talk a little bit about his overall big picture thoughts on AI and how it fits into business school teaching. And then we'll have Kevin Bryan from University of Toronto talking about how to use AI to improve the classroom experiences. And later we'll have Peter Zamsky from INSEAD, who will show us actually a very cool strategy teaching tool. And lastly, but not least, right, we'll have Tom Colby from UNC Chapel Hill, who will actually demonstrate his own book and his experiences in teaching entrepreneurship with the application of generative AI. So our overall plan today is to have each speaker talk for about 15 to 20 minutes, and at the end, we'll open up the floor for Q&A. So thank you all for making the time to be here. And without further ado, I will actually hand it over to Marcin, who will be our first speaker for today.
Thank you very much, Jai, for this introduction, and thank you for inviting me here. So like Jai said, I'm going to open up this series of presentations with kind of a more general look at the AI. So just a few words about myself. My sort of journey started with teaching the traditional strategic management classes across different programs, whether it's undergrad or graduate. I also taught machine learning in the doctoral school, so kind of different machine learning techniques and tools and programming that go along with it. And then at some point, I created a course, which is Strategy in the Age of AI, about 3 years ago. So before the generative AI revolution, which kind of both changed and also left a lot of things the same. So what I'm going to present today is kind of some of the sort of sense making, and you can think about it as field notes from teaching these different subjects and the crossover between them, and how I think AI is sort of changing or introducing new challenges and also new possibilities when it comes to classroom. And I'm going to specifically be speaking from the perspective of a strategy scholar, so teaching strategy, strategic management. So some things may be more or less applicable to what you're doing. And also when it comes to the audiences, I will also speak about some things that may be more applicable to maybe undergrads or MBAs, and some things which may be more applicable to executives. So not everything nicely kind of works across these different levels, but I'm going to also leave it to you to kind of parse it out. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my presentation mode. So just make sure you adjust your screens and the contrast. But I'm going to present this way so you can also see me and you can see the slides. So just a big picture perspective when it comes to teaching with the AI. I mean, so one thing that I kind of noticed happening a lot when I speak to colleagues and to others when it comes to teaching with the AI is that people very much focus on this sort of a first quadrant. You know, if you sort of still remember when the GPT kind of ChatGPT came into the scene, everybody was sort of panicking about the problem of evaluation. And the reason is that we very often want to evaluate understanding of the participants, of students in the classroom. And we usually do this to a large extent with kind of take-home assignments when they have to basically demonstrate that they understand the subject. And sort of the sad truth very quickly emerged that this is no longer possible to a large extent. Those large language models, sort of the AI is really great at sort of simulating understanding, or at least kind of giving a nice sort of surface perception as if, you know, I understand it because it kind of makes sense. You know, there are nice sentences, there are bullet points, and so on. And unfortunately, kind of, you know, when it comes to those take-home assignments, this is out. So if we want to use those to evaluate the understanding, this is not going to work as it did in the past. However, using generative AI for creating exams, so coming up with creative questions, case studies, sort of similar answers, or let's say kind of booby trap answers when we give plausibly sounding answers which are actually incorrect, and so the students need to find out and explain why. These are quite kind of very powerful and now cheaply to produce sort of artifacts that we can do with the AI. However, access to, again, to those large language models during the exams, that's kind of out. So, whether it's we were going to evaluate it face to face, this is, we can use some of the existing things, like quick quizzes and so on. But we need to kind of face this, that the evaluation of understanding became difficult with large language models. However, there is a lot of other stuff that usually people don't talk about. And this is about teaching understanding of the core concepts, or teaching or evaluating the application of different tools, and specifically the generative AI, where I think there's a lot of possibilities. And I know that some of my colleagues here on the panel will talk specifically about some really creative ways that we can use the AI to teach or evaluate the application. So going back to this quadrant, in terms of teaching understanding, the LLMs are really excellent tools. I mean, first of all, students can use this to go deeper, to sort of ask questions. It's sort of more than just a Google search. So we can go and really kind of ask for examples. So the generative models can really become a good tutor, and we can also use it. We can use it for the students to test their understanding. We can, again, prepare some classroom exercises using this. We can create new stories, or let's say port certain ideas to new industries. So this is actually really powerful. Also role playing. So there's a lot of very nice sort of tools that are available online, which can turn your GPT-4, let's say, into a salary negotiator or some deal negotiator. So we can now use those AI personas to practice. Let's say also we can use it for case analysis. So students who prepare, let's say, for consulting interviews, they can use this to great effect. Also in terms of abstract thinking, so the ability, I mean, first of all, interacting with the AI also kind of requires the students to really understand some of the concept on more abstract level, to be able to interact intelligently with the AI. So we can use also the AI to generate exercises and scenarios for this. Now, moving on to the application, I don't think we can really ignore AI anymore. I mean, some people who think that AI will basically blow over, and we can go back to the usual sort of to the old normal. I think there are fewer and fewer of those, but I mean, this time is this is a way companies, whether they want it or not, they are facing the reality that employees are using those different tools for different things. Sometimes for things they should be using, and sometimes for things they shouldn't be. So it's just like our students. So I think we need to sort of face it and really start to teach and introduce these tools. So in terms of teaching the application, for example, the one way that I changed the assignments in my class, now I require students to use the AI for take-home exams or for the take-home assignments. Let's say they have to do some industry analysis. I want them to actually use the AI as many models as possible. But I'm actually now spending more time at the second part of the assignment, which is I wanted the teams or individuals to really give me sort of their report on what did they learn, or how did they use, which tools did they use, and for what. Because these things can actually become a great basis for discussion in the classroom about which approaches work, which approaches don't. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a few slides. What we can actually learn through kind of interrogation of how the participants are using those AI tools which are available to them. So I think what we need to really teach students is they need to know some basic concepts of AI, so how these systems work and how they don't, like what does really a generative AI do and what it doesn't, what's the kind of the technological substrate that makes this magic work. But I think even more than that, we need to focus even more on the basic concepts of strategy, because a person who doesn't really understand what they want to get out of the system, let's say what an industry analysis is or what a competitive analysis is, if they don't really know what type of bits of information they need to learn, it's going to really result in very poor interaction. So I really like this concept of intelligent interrogation, that we need to teach participants how to intelligently interrogate systems. So when they get the output, how do they spot if the output is of high quality? What are the potential weak spots? And how can I probe the system to see actually if the information or the insights that I'm getting are actually worth anything? So I think that this is quite important. And finally, when it comes to evaluation, of application. I would introduce this to the classroom. I mean, students really need to learn, need to discuss. So already I mentioned having a debrief session on the use of these tools. So what did work, what didn't work. I usually find those discussions really interesting. And also I learn a lot about new tools. I mean, there are almost unbelievable amount of new tools popping up every week. Sometimes I see students using very creative new models, very creative new sort of ports or modes of the existing models. So it's also a great learning experience for everybody. Now, sort of the reason I emphasize this discussion and debriefing in the classroom from using the AI is because I'm worried, and that's what I also observed, and this is especially with younger populations, let's say with undergrads or the master students. I'm sort of worried that the approach to solving the home assignments that we sort of teach in the classroom will be also the way that they learn or internalize. This is how I should be using these tools. So if we don't pay attention to how they use the tools for assignments, they may actually get some really bad habits and then actually execute them in the workplace. So here is what I actually spotted. It's very often kind of the tool is used as kind of a quick shortcut to get you to the answer, so that you, instead of spending 5 hours, you're going to spend 5 minutes on an assignment, and you can spend the resulting 4 hours and 55 minutes on browsing internet, watching Netflix, or doing something else. So I think that this instinct has to be addressed very quickly. And usually when students do this, they pose very high-level questions. They pretty much just copy paste your assignment into the system. Let's say, give me some analysis of the copper industry, and then they get the answer and copy paste maybe with few additional sort of modifications, and I have done my assignment, which is just the opposite of what we want to do. So this is what I've seen actually from the reports that I ask students to hand in. They will give me, let's say, examples or screenshots. This is how I used the system. And these two, for example, those two examples are really sort of bad types of questions, right? I mean, they give you usually some very high level answer. And that's kind of, what I think is one of the big problems, is this interaction with this very wonderful tool at the very high level, which kind of gets you to the answer, but it's not necessarily the right answer. Because what I see is that if you start with the answer from the GPT, usually what you do afterwards is you just ask it to expand on individual points. Like, let's say, tell me why this force is high. And what you get is basically an exercise in kind of confirmation bias, where you have the initial output, which is more or less accurate, and I'm going to talk about it in a moment. And then all you do is you try to prove yourself right. And of course, the smarter the students, the team, and the AI, the more likely they will just confirm what they have done, which is absolutely the upside down way of doing strategic analysis. However, the large language models make it very attractive to go sort of from the top. So start with the answer, and then just kind of drill down and just present some evidence for the first claim. However, what we know from the strategic analysis, that you should start with data, with the analysis. So you first collect a lot of information, then you start to see patterns, and you kind of notice some mechanism, and you formulate some plan and some strategy. So we need to keep teaching students that that's still the right approach. And if you use the AI, you cannot just bypass this this process, because you will just kind of end up with a sort of a nice confirmation bias exercise. So here is just one example, very quick. I mean, if you want to demonstrate it in the class, to make students kind of doubt a little bit in the power of these tools, I just show sort of a typical query that we may ask some kind of a team to do. Let's say, analyze an industry in a certain locale. And you can ask different models. So you can say you can ask the same large language model to give you Porter 5 forces analysis of this industry. And you can ask the same model several times. You can ask different models, and what you see is that both the variance between the models, which is more or less expected, but also within the models is huge. So if you ask it, now it's going to give you one answer. You ask it 5 minutes later, gives you a different answer. And this is exactly kind of the problem of starting from the top, because it really starts with a very kind of general, very high level sort of a shot. And then if you just kind of follow up with additional queries, what you're going to get is you're just going to get more details on a wrong answer. So this is something to keep in mind. Now, a few more notes from my field, kind of maybe more loosely connected, but I wanted to share them. So first, one thing to also make clear that we don't do with the assignments. I mean, the fact that now you have a large language model and you can do the same in a shorter time doesn't mean that that's the right approach. Because the market sets the price for what the output should be given the cost of intelligence that exists in this environment. So if the cost of intelligence, and definitely AI kind of made a lot of the intelligent type of tasks cheaper, then the market will just demand more. And so I think one of the recommendations I would make is to increase the bar for quality for the assignments, take-home assignments, by quite a large amount. It's no longer okay to just turn in a few slides with kind of a generic analysis. Now I really want to see that you are using these tools and you're using them productively. So I want to be floored. I still want to see, let's say, 10 hours of work, but with the AI, I'm expecting fireworks. So kind of that's one of the messages. Point number two, and I've noticed some people do this, not only for AI, by the way. This is not necessarily only AI thing. We have lots of different courses that people motivate. And I usually found that, especially with technology, motivating with fear. So, it's AI is coming for your jobs. It's going to change everything. You need to learn AI or you will not survive. It's not maybe the best motivation because it creates a certain sort of attitudes among the students towards these tools and technology. So I think that usually what works better is some kind of an opportunity, additional competitive advantage that comes from those tools rather than kind of, the fear mongering that still sometimes happens. Number three, what I also noticed, and this is particularly as you move to more senior audiences, let's say if you talk to executives, actually we have to focus way more on the core strategic concepts because usually the implementation of AI in organizations do not fail because of technical problems. It's not that some model didn't compute. It's usually because of mismatch between what tool have we chosen and what problems we have. So actually teaching strategy and core strategy is still super valuable, or I would even claim more valuable now with the AI, because AI gives us so many different seductive options. Vendors come with 20 different tools that can help our company flourish, but which one do we choose? And this we need to choose from the point of view of our competitive situation and our strengths and weaknesses, not because the vendor comes with some kind of new shiny tool. So I think that's also important. I wouldn't neglect sort of really just the core strategic subjects in the classroom. And finally, I would say to use surveys to understand our audience. It's a fast evolving field, AI, and there's a lot of new technologies, and also people make up their minds as they go about, is it a threat or opportunity? I'll be using it, I'm not using it. So I always test the audience before I teach. So before I approach them with the subjects, I want to know several things about them. So I'll just show you kind of two questions from my survey. So for example, one is, so how are you concerned about the impact of AI on your future employment? So here is what I got this year with the batch of master's students. So it's kind of a split between concerned, not concerned, and somewhat concerned. But compared with the last year, what you would notice is that kind of people seem to slowly put their bets on the table. So a year ago, they were way more sort of somewhat concerned, somewhere in the middle. Now people are either very concerned or not concerned at all. So that's kind of, we sort of see bifurcation, and probably very often in the audience, you would meet people who are super excited and they will listen to you, and some people who are very skeptical. And it's important to sort of address both and bring those both groups sort of into the same, or at least close enough for the sessions to be useful. And the last question, here's another one. So do you think that AI and automation can make management decisions, can make better management decisions? And here what you see is people are starting to sort of realize, at least that's kind of what, what from my groups, from the demographics that I work with, it's looking like people are starting to see that these are pretty powerful tools, and it's not kind of a gimmick. Of course, I'm a little bit concerned about this sort of pessimism. Is like, okay, AI will be better than I am. I hope that people will sort of not end up with this conclusion. But again, it's sort of important to know where they are and to meet them where they are. So that's from me. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm gonna hand over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mache, for sharing your thoughts and this cool survey results. And this is super insightful. Next, we have Kevin. Kevin, you ready to share your slides? You're going next. Thank you. Handing this over to you.
Perfect. All good. You guys see it?
Yes, this is great.
All right, great. So, hi, my name's Kevin Bryan. I'm at Toronto. Really glad to join you guys today. Just quick background on myself. I'm a game theorist by training, but worked on AI for a number of years. I think the first time I gave a talk on roughly this topic, my slide said GPT-2. So we've been using it. I'm doing research in this area, and I also help run an AI program that's actually was the world's first accelerator on deep learning. So we had this actually before large language models were invented with the 2017 attention to all you need paper. So we were running this accelerator in 2016. That said, I'm going to focus today on large language models specifically, just given the interest on the teaching side. Maciej gave you a great introduction. I want to show you kind of where we want to head is there's a kind of famous paper in education called Bloom's 2 sigma problem. Basically, the argument is in a perfect world, we would give individualized education. So you'd hire like a tutor for every student. After every class, the tutor would walk through, check what the students understand, what they don't understand, help them understand the stuff they don't. And the famous education paper, many caveats, was that you can get multiple standard deviation increases in learning in a given time period with individualized tutoring. Why we don't do this is obviously it's super expensive. We just don't have a tutor for every student. So basically where we're gonna get though, and I would say like we're 90% of the way there, to be honest. I'll show you why. Is that for every student you have in a course, we'll be able to track on a day-to-day level for every student what they know and what they still don't know, and be able to assist them with tutoring at the level, I would say, of your like current TAs or course assistants. That's not really a problem. We'll be able to spin up question banks in an individualized way at like really large scale, grade sample exams with comments more accurately than your course assistants currently do. And the important thing here is the way we're going to do this is actually not using so-called foundation models, so things like Claude and Gemini and GPT, but we're going to have software built on top of those foundation models to perform these tests. And this is just a general point for large language models is that ChatGPT came out just under 24 months ago, so just under 2 years ago. It's still super early. There's literally thousands of companies basically building tools and UXs on top of these foundation models, and then just kind of riding that curve of the underlying, you can call it intelligence improvement, prediction improvement of the foundation models to develop these tools. So right now, what we have students do is they type stuff into GPT when they're doing work or doing assignments. That's very quickly going to come to an end. We're going to have much more specific, much more useful software, including for education. So I'll show you why. Before I get there, though, I want to show you, for folks who don't understand exactly what generative AI is doing, to understand why it can do some things and does poorly at others, we need to understand how it works. One important part of this is that we want to aim for the future when developing our teaching. So the rate of improvement is just shockingly fast. So, a lot of my research is on diffusion of innovation. The diffusion of generative AI is the fastest diffusion of any technology into the workplace that we've ever seen. And the rate of improvement in the technology, what they call scaling laws in the AI world, are basically like reasons why we can predict improvements on certain tasks as we grow the size of the model or spend more time on inference on the model or use more data in the model. Basically, these scaling laws have proved to be very predictable. So it's pretty easy, actually, to guess where we'll be a year or two from now. I was recently out in California at OpenAI and Meta and Anthropic, and I asked probably 100 researchers what they see internally. And not a single person told me they see any slowdown in these areas. Sometimes you see some press coverage suggesting this, like literally zero. In fact, they all think I'm hopelessly pessimistic because I don't think that, you know, generative AI will be able to perform like all human tasks in 5 years. That's basically where they think things are going. I think it's a little wrong, but the people developing the models believe that, just so we're all on the same page. Here's the rate of diffusion. So why it's important for your employees to understand what's going on in AI. This is from September 2024. It's a study by Dave Deming and friends. And what you see is like we're already at 28% of workers, this is in the US, are using generative AI on a weekly basis. That's incredibly fast for technology where this number is like 1%, 2 years ago. And this is just growing. Mind you, this survey includes plumbers, you know what I mean? So people you wouldn't expect to adopt early. There is just no way your students starting your MBA today and graduating in 2 years are not going to be using AI for work tasks in 2 years. It's just not going to be the case. So how do these generative AI or large language models work? Sometimes people pejoratively refer to them as stochastic parrots. So basically things that randomly repeat back stuff they've seen in their training data. And actually to understand what's going on with generative AI, that is the right interpretation. So for example, if I were to just start typing, you can do this if you want, open up GPT or wherever you want, type the sun ... If I were to ask you guys in the audience, what word should come next? You're going to say the sun is, the sun shines, that whatever it happens to be, okay? And you can think in the English language around the words the sun, there's some probability distribution of next words if I saw everything ever written in English. And maybe it's like is 20%, shines 4%, rose 1%, and so on. And so effectively, you can just think of these LLMs basically are just doing next word prediction based on a training set where they've been very clever about understanding what previous text to use to do the next word prediction. Underlying the model, that's really all that's going on. So if we make small changes, like we say le soleil, you would say a instead of is. The model's also going to say a. You can try it yourself. I feel very confident in this prediction. But here's where they got kind of clever, and this is why the architecture of the transformer that makes modern large language models possible was such a big breakthrough. So if I say the sun at Yosemite shines brightly across the, if you just saw the word the sun shines brightly across the in English, probably room, hallway, there's some probability distribution like that. But you as a human, you understand this word Yosemite is playing a really big role in what word should come next. And so, there's no rooms at Yosemite, this national park in California, for the sun to shine across. You would understand if you've ever been there, there's a giant cliff with a waterfall and people look at this cliff famously called Half Dome. And so you would say something like the sun at Yosemite shines brightly across the face of Half Dome. If you were to type in the sun at Yosemite shines brightly across the ... into GPT, I would bet with probability 0.5, it's going to say something related to Half Dome. Okay, so why is it doing that? If you look at these italicized words, the so-called attention head of these models is trying to figure out of all the words it's previously seen in whatever you're requesting, which ones should have high weight and which should have low weight in the next predictions. And so in this case, sun, Yosemite, across are going to play a big role in understanding it should be face of Half Dome. So this attention mechanism basically allows the model to look at a much larger corpus of prior, in this case, text, but same with pixels on an image or frames of a video to make predictions. So very similar to actually the way, one way that human brains work, not the only way that human brains work, but one way the human brain works. So you should understand whenever you're using an LLM for anything, it's literally doing next word prediction. There's nothing else. There's no memory. It doesn't know any facts. It's doing next word prediction. Okay, that's it. So given that, amazingly, it works okay. It's surprisingly powerful. And we have a few tricks to make it work better. Actually, most of the things we add on top make it work worse. The problem with this is that it's not exactly how the human brain works. So there are some tasks that are very, very easy for generative AI and some tasks that are very, very difficult. And a kind of well-known paper in this area called The Jagged Frontier argues that humans are very bad at knowing which tasks are the easy ones and which tasks are the hard ones. So as an example, if I were to ask, just go to GPT and ask, explain quantum entanglement in a reasonably accessible way, you'll see it's discussing the qubits and their basis states here. Even writes down the LaTeX properly. I looked through this; it looks totally right to me. This is, I think, a pretty hard task, hard in the sense I suspect none of your students would get this correct. On the other hand, you can also go to GPT 4.0 and type in, for example, like, is 9.9 or 9.11 bigger? And it often will say 9.11 is bigger than 9.9. You can ask how many R's there are in strawberry. It'll say 2, not 3. So these are tasks that like my 4-year-old niece is going to get correct. So when you're using tools based on generative AI, you want to understand how come this task is easy and this task is hard. And essentially, the answer really comes down to that next word prediction. So it's a little bit predictable when you know how LLMs are working, that take 9.11 and 9.9. So for one, the way I'm splitting the tokens, 11 is bigger than 9. Okay, so understanding this is one number depends on how I'm storing the tokens. The second thing is, if I take like a book and it's a chapter 9, section 9.1, section 9.2, section 9.3, wouldn't be that surprising that there's in the training data 9.11s that are after 9.9s. And so this turns out to be somewhat challenging. On the strawberry problem, because I'm doing next word prediction, so I'm not breaking down the word into its letter components, actually understanding the underlying letters is not very easy for the AI. So these are kind of well-known examples, but you should generally be thinking of AI as a problem where like 95%, I have a paper with Joshua Gans coming out soon, but on this topic, but 95%, it will get correct, even on hard tasks that statistical models we've seen before do a very poor job at. But what the 5% is going to get wrong is hard for you to understand. And so your use of the AI should be ones where either that 5% remaining is not a problem when it gets it wrong, or that 5% remaining can be easily cleaned up by a human at lower cost than just doing the whole task yourself. Okay, and that's going to matter for education. Let me show you a few tasks that model would apply to. Then I'll show you what we do in the classroom. So brainstorming is actually just a fantastic use case for AI right now. One I use like literally every day. On your models, on your teaching, everything. So for example, I ran a test with some students where I gave them a new company and asked for ways they could monetize it. Okay, so it was a entrepreneurial experimentation class, a Bayesian entrepreneurship class. And they were with their groups. They were sitting down. We had about 100 students. They came up with like 40 ideas. And while they were doing that, in real time, I spun up just a small AI calling these APIs and tried to generate the same predictions. And then we voted, and the AI won 100 to 0 in our class vote on what the best idea was. In fact, the AI's third best idea was better than the best idea that any of the students came up with for monetizing. So if this works in the classroom, you can imagine for like many tasks that involve like light brainstorming, the reason this is a good task is I can just throw away the bad answers. So if AI gives me 20 brainstorms and 2 of them are good and 18 are bad, it's totally fine. I just need the 2 good ones. So that's a good use case for AI. Another one, like document search. Anytime you, like if I'm preparing a class or writing a book, for example, I've got all my interviews and I've got all my documents and whatever. I just throw them all into, in this case, a software called Notebook LM from Google. It's been around for a few months. And it's very, very good at finding, in this case, like I asked it about a paper I wrote to just give me some details on what the sample was. I can try to control F through these PDFs, but it's just a total waste of time. Okay, so we have software that's like much easier for finding relevant information as I'm preparing work. I would say if you're not already using stuff like this, it's just a mistake. Simple coding. So imagine I want to spin up like a little web app that lets me look at, okay, I've got some predictions on growth in sales for my startup and in cost reductions over time as I get better. And I want to know, like, when am I going to hit break even under certain assumptions? So I could, try to do this in Excel or something, whatever. To spin this up, this is actually a web app. It's on the web right now. I can just send it to you. To spin this up, have it on the web in a modifiable way with this UI, and even modify the UI slightly to get it exactly how I want it, took 3 minutes, I would say. In this case, I use something called an artifact from Claude, but there's many ways you can do it. So like these kind of like simple demonstrations, your students should understand. They should never be trying to do this kind of stuff straight from Excel. It's just a waste of their time, actually, in 2024, and becoming increasingly a waste of their time over time. And if, for more complex coding, this is the the biggest use case right now for generative AI. This is Cursor, a program that if you write code, you should be using Cursor. It just demonstrably gives you something like a 2x speed up in the time it takes to spin up a code base. Think of Cursor as basically it has GPT or Claude built into an IDE or a coding user interface. So the way I write code now is I probably write 20% of the lines myself, and 80% I'm just reviewing the computer's code. This is another good 95% solution because it will make a mistake. It's much easier for me to spot the mistakes than to write the code myself. So I can just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines of code for a project I can write up in a day now at like production ready or paper ready level. And so the reason I show you Cursor is that this is not raw GPT. This is not raw Claude. This is a program built on top of those foundation models that integrates with our existing workflow. That's what's going to happen in education and in the sectors your students are going to work in really over the next couple of years. So the time at which they're just going to go to GPT and type stuff in, that will come to an end because this will just be integrated into their existing workflows in a much easier to use way. Let me show you what that would look like for education. Oh, I should mention also, for people who teach more mathematical classes, O1 Preview from GPT has gotten quite good at math to the extent where when I'm writing a theory paper, I'm often like passing my proofs to GPT just to have them check if I made a stupid mistake as I go. And I would say it's already as good as like a not very good graduate student. I did see at OpenAI the two models ahead of OI Preview that are at the level of a good graduate student, honestly, in mathematical derivation, like maybe better than your graduate students, honestly. So this is how we'll be writing theory very soon. We'll be using AI to help us very frequently. So okay, so on the teaching side, what I don't like about how students currently use LLMs is that, in a course like mine, I'm teaching, say, an MBA strategy course. The stuff you get on Google or GPT is not correct. Like, what's the school paying me for, right? They're not paying me to do all this research and teach us stuff you can just read in a book at the library for free. So I have a way I want to teach. I have an understanding, like you come to my class, you do a 5 forces analysis, I'm going to like give you a bad grade. I think it's nonsense. So we have a way we want our students to learn for our class. Okay. So how can we use these tools? The students will get on GPT or get on Google and start doing things that we don't agree with. So the answer is, let's just train a model on our own course content, throw video or audio of our lectures into it, throw our slides, our handouts into this, even throw email responses we sent to old students where we thought we had a good explanation of something. And then just let the AI take over from there. Let the AI answer student questions. Let the AI spin up your question banks for you. You can toss the ones you don't like. Let the AI grade exams, not final grades, but say sample exams where you can give comments. We're already doing all of that, actually. I built some stuff for my class. We wound up spinning out a company last year. So actually, this is being used all over the world already. But for example, like, students were studying tacit collusion in my class this week. They wanted some example. I don't want stuff that's not drawing on my class notes. I don't want general content. And I also want the thing to be more in a tutorial style and not just giving you the answer to homework. So I don't want it to answer my homework questions that week. This is all completely doable if I have control of the system on the back end. So I can just have the AI not answer this week's homework. I can have the AI cite the slides I want the students to draw on, as you can see here. And what kind of use do you get from these kind of systems? So here you can see the kind of documents I would throw in, for example. What kind of use do you get? This is last week in our MBA strategy course here at Rotman. The students interacted with the system 3,370 times. So I don't have the ability, and my TAs don't have the ability to answer 3,300 questions, to spin up hundreds of questions in question banks on a weekly basis. or to answer questions in Hindi or in Spanish or in Chinese, all of which we can do at 2 in the morning once we use AI. So these tools, we're aiming for the future. They're just going to be everywhere in classrooms very, very soon. I just don't see a world in where our teaching just involves we lecture and hope the students figure it out using Google afterward. Education is going to change quite quickly, just as your students' jobs are going to change quite quickly. Thank you very much. Let me pass it to the next speaker.
Thank you, Kevin, for sharing both the technical and the non-technical part and the actual tool that you have used and developed. Next, we are turning this over to Peter. Peter, the floor is yours.
All righty, thank you very much. I'm going to build actually quite closely on what we just heard. I'll go fast, and based on comments, I will definitely get into a particular tool that I want to demo and get your feedback on, so that'll come. So the objectives are to show you this tool, but also to put it in this broader context of how do we pick the right use cases to work on, which I think very much echoes what we've heard. So just a little bit about me, how I come at this. Obviously, long-term strategy professor at INSEAD, come off of 10 years as deputy dean of INSEAD, so launched our online courses, designed and opened up our first facility in San Francisco. For those who know my colleague Itai Stern and the stuff he's done in strategy around VR, I would have supported that as dean of innovation and got him his funding. I've been in the middle of a 2-year sabbatical after all that admin work. Was very timely with Gen AI coming along, and deep interest in how that's going to drive ed tech and teaching innovation. Started playing around with it. Had a short article blog post in HBR a year ago. So here we go. Some thoughts. I'm going to start. Be patient. 60 seconds. Way up in the sky, and then we're going to go increasingly down into the field. So here we go. Definitely super excited to be in education at the time when this revolution hits. I think oftentimes digital was pretty slow to transform education. This one will be big. And we know that when you've got these big revolutions, use cases matter a lot. So we remember, the original Industrial Revolution. Energy got cheap. I very much agree with what someone was saying. It's all about key inputs getting cheap. So, we go from muscles to steam and electricity. Same thing, physical production gets cheap. We just lived and taught through information getting cheap. And so, as one of the speakers said, we're suddenly at a moment where certain types, I totally agree with that, certain types of intelligence have gotten almost free. And as we heard, more is coming. So obviously, these are general purpose technologies. It's just interesting that it overlaps with GPT, which means there's a ton of use cases. This is not my slide. This is just one of those things off the internet. These are a whole bunch of AI use cases in general, but this is even just taking legal. These are like someone's 12 use cases in AI for the legal profession. We had the same thing. So I very much agree with some of what Maciek was laying out there. I'll sort of, how do I think about this? So using strategy tools, you can think about all the activities in any function, like management education. All of those in principles could be impacted. So obviously we've heard you can write cases, you can use it to design your lectures. That's the content creation. Obviously, and some people will use it to curate, give you personalized content. You're seeing some great stuff supporting even group work. Totally agree with Brian. Conversational learning and tutors could be huge. But you're going to see the place I'm going to go is really around this one here. A little bit that Maciek touched on, but I'm going to go much deeper, which is around really helping students apply their knowledge. So going from way up, that's the piece that's caught my attention. And obviously it gets into a little bit testing and assessment as well. So here we go. In management education, again, INSEAD, we do a lot of exec eds. You certainly see this in the exec ed market. Just knowing things is not enough, right? So just knowing, seeing a lecture on industry analysis, as Maciek would tell you, is not going to be enough for people to do a really quality job, or certainly in a lot of the big leadership areas, watching a video on active listening is not the same as doing it. And so one of the, we know that getting the value out of technology is not necessarily to start with the technology, but to start with what are the big problems we need to solve. And one of the big current places where there's a gap is this moving students from knowing to doing. So that sort of caught my attention. And then the other thing is that that's sort of starting from the demand side. If I start from the supply side, what do we know as educators? The more active you make the pedagogy, the better the retention and the learning, right? So that's the classic thing. That's why we have so much group work. That's why we have so much application work. And so what sort of I've been working on are two things. One is exactly what you heard earlier. You can do amazing conversational learning, role plays. Not only is the LLM great at playing the roles, it's great at giving feedback. And just like Brian said, you can go to ChatGPT and you can play around with that. But the real thing, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in just a second, is how do you build that software layer on top that actually makes it much smoother and more powerful, frankly. And the one I'm going to talk about today is, so we have a set of understandings that we teach in management education around behavior, and that's the role play. But in strategy, we teach much more, not only, but much more about analysis. And the going from knowing to doing is doing the analysis. And really, I want to tackle that troubling slide that Natchek said. How is it that we're going to give people these tools and help them do the stuff without making them dumber, which is, I think, the real real risk we face. So here we go, virtual strategy assistant. Bear with me. So I'm going to show you, remind you, sort of basic tool that I'm teaching. This would be like the first proof of concept I did. And then how do we build the tool that's going to help people go from knowing to doing? And this would just be the first of a sequence. It's really an approach to melding strategy assistance with strategy teaching, but it just makes it concrete. So we'll start the very beginning of like a core strategy course. You're usually teaching something about industry analysis. One of the first things I do is have people map different industries with a value chain. Again, people like to talk about ecosystems now. I typically stretch my definition and use of value chain to go to ecosystem, but that's so you'll see that in the way I've done the tool. When we teach, here's the thing, you say, oh, that's the concept. Let me do an example. Here's the hotel industry. So this would be me, and I tend to put the players on there. Again, I'm thinking ecosystem, so I have people who influence value in the chain, so travel guides, not necessarily there, and suppliers. So this is the basic thing. And again, it's just amazing, especially maybe in executive audiences, you teach people this stuff, and then when they actually go and even apply it to themselves, it's slow and painful. And that's really going to be this idea of how do we accelerate the application with software based on LLMs without making people more stupid. So here we go. Then the other thing where this also gets hard is it's not just the static map. That's not really that interesting. It's how is it changing? You've done, not my favorite tool, but there's like Pestle. These are all the changes. There's the internet. And again, it's really, how do you take an industry and map that? So that is the exercise. That's what the students are learning. And let's go take a look at a tool. So here we go. Let's see if this works. Hopefully you're seeing this. So log in. There we go. So yes, here we go. So this is stuff that I've deployed not only in my own teaching, but other teaching at INSEAD. Here's this first value chain. Again, this is just to give you a sense of the approach, and I'll voice over what we're trying to do. So again, this is not just, oh, ChatGPT, do my homework for me. It's like a system you engage with. Exactly like I think Brian was saying, how do we put intelligence in the user interface on top? One thing I know from teaching is that people are often not very good at defining their industry. So they're either too specific or more often too broad. So before I go in and work with the students, the tool to do the value chain, we're going to check the industry definition. So banking is a bit broad. So maybe I mean, retail banking, and actually maybe the LL, this is all powered, I should say. This stuff here is GPT-4. It tends to have a US bias. So if I need to say something like France, here we go. So we'll just see. I can now check my industry definition. Boom. Here we come. Some days GPT is faster than others. So here it's making some sort of a API call. Anyway, you can see that it's now got, for those who know France, those are French providers. The one I'm going to do for you, though, is cruise line operators, because I was just playing around with that. So we'll do something fun. Let's hit go. So again, one of the things I also emphasize is, again, this is a little bit what Brian was saying as well. Does GPT have information on your industry? Does it know the providers? Does it know the services offered on the left side? Yes, obviously, the training data is full of people talking about their cruises. So here we go. So now we're going here, and it is drawing up a draft initial value chain. But the idea here is that the student is going to interact with this tool to actually create the final output. So again, you can click on any part and customize it. Again, this is trying to make the learning more active, keep them engaged. So yeah, I want Royal Caribbean. Remember what I said, that it's all about the changes. So here we're also querying, hey, what is new and emerging? So this is, sometimes interesting to see. So, I'm going to put these up here. And what you can see is it is customizing that. Or, here I could actually rethink the set of suppliers. And we can put that on. End users. This is super important. You can actually, there's a whole tool just about this. But what are the target segments? We got seniors, family vacationers. What's new and emerging? Okay, eco-conscious. Anyway, so that would be a basic thing. And again, there's so much you can build on this. Let me see if I can get this thing out of the way. Yeah, there we go. So what I said, you can make this into a full ecosystem mapping. So here you can get into, who influences demand, what's the substitute for this thing. So just building in, so you can see, yes, all inclusive this. Again, this is hopefully giving the student lots of things to think about. They're interacting. There's various ways you can go deeper. This is just and then at the end of the day, students were like, that's cute, but I need a PowerPoint to submit. So you hit this PowerPoint. Let's see if I've got multiple screens popped up. So let me see if I can get this over to your screen. I don't know. Anyway, it does at the click of a button make a PowerPoint, but I've got to ease my presentation for you. I'm going to copy the slide. I'll copy it. We'll get out of here. Yeah, let's go here. Boom. And we're back to the presentation. Boom. And just in case you don't believe me, there it is. So here is paste keep source. Boom. So this is like an editable PowerPoint that you could then go and build on. So let me, mindful of time. Again, so the idea is this is just showing you, I think really what Brian was talking about, that there's a whole bunch of things that are coming where you can build software on top, make it interesting. So let me just end with two things. One is, what's the architecture? So this is the basic idea, and this is also what Maciek was saying, is strategy, concepts, and frameworks are great for doing prompt engineering. And what's interesting here is, of course, as time goes on, rather than us interacting with raw LLMs, experts will do the prompt engineering for you. You just show up and say, ooh, I need to change. I'm trying to do a study of forklift trucks, and it puts it in all of those prompts, right? So we've thought about, it's not rocket science, but what's the best way to ask about influencers in a value chain? What's the best way to think about compliments? The best way to think about emerging compliments? And then the other piece that we're experimenting with is, well, what kind of user interface or user interface at this point is going to make this as engaging for the students as possible. And again, trying to build out a bit of a cloud infrastructure so you can add more value, like the PowerPoints, set up accounts, have teams on it and do collaboration. I should mention, we do also support some colleagues at INSEAD who are doing some of these new studies, research studies about how LLMs are used. So obviously the ability to save all the queries and to do that for research is also important. I think it would be good if collectively as academics, management, academic professionals, we had more control over these tools rather than just leaving them to others outside the industry to drive. So that's a little bit my hypothesis there. Maybe I said I think use cases are important for all of us collectively to think about and for our sector to think about. How do we develop this? So let me just end with a little bit on that. In general, and again, lots has been talked about, but clearly we heard already, the output has to be good enough. You want to use this stuff on stuff that it's good at. And at the same time, obviously hard for humans to do, but easy for humans to check, right? So there is still fallibility. So that's one, and execution matters. So prompt engineering is critical. We do think keeping humans in the loop is important, and especially in strategy, and then building full systems. So just here, and I'll just pause on this, I think it's super important. What you definitely see is that when you give typical practitioners, not your top MBAs maybe, but typical people running businesses, you explain your tool, a business model canvas, all of these kinds of customer journey maps, whatever it is, and it's a blank piece of paper, it's hard and time consuming for them to do a draft. Turns out much easier for them to react and refine a first draft. So that's what it's about. Again, you will be shocked if you haven't played around how much contextual knowledge the LLMs have already ingested. Not everything. There are domains where it's weak, but so many it's strong. And as we heard, it's just going to get more so. Lastly, in terms of execution, again, our concepts that what we teach are popular. It's all over the training data. They have really good understanding. That's why these tutors are going to be so good. But here they've got, if you use the stuff that we teach, it's going to be an amazing complement with the right tools for doing the analysis. But at the same time, I think it's just really important that the people who have to execute the strategy are the ones who get involved in this, right? We know, really poor strategy practice is you bring in a bunch of consultants from a top consulting company, they just go off and do the stuff on their own and then present it and fly away, and you wonder why nothing gets executed. Same thing, if you just get this brilliant strategy that pops out of a machine, I'd be worried. And then again, there's a whole set of other reasons why it's important for those people to execute it, to understand it. And so I think really what's sort of motivating me is to try and pick use cases where that leverage what I know about strategy and good strategy and practice, but also steer the development of these tools to places that will make our students and make people more productive and more important in the economy, not less. And I think I am out of time. So there's that. I'll put in the chat. We use this in INSEAD. Lots of people have asked us if they could keep the product. So we're productizing it so that we can get a little bit of money for development for people who want to keep it. We're considering whether we might want to open it up to other academics. So I'll post a link. You can check it out and you can let us know whether you think that might be of interest. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for the demo. This is very helpful, and hopefully we'll start using this and in our strategy classes. Next, last but not least, we have Tom, who will talk a little bit more about generative AI in entrepreneurship teaching. Tom, handing this over to you.
All right, thanks, Jay. Hi, Peter, that was great. I'm going to share my screen and go from there. We all right, Jay?
Yes, that's great.
All right. So you've heard a lot of words today. If you were recording this with a recording and you created a transcript of it, you could analyze it and get a summary very, very quickly from ChatGPT. So that's just one of the applications that I try and get students to understand when they're doing entrepreneurship, and because it requires learning about your customer, having conversations with them. And that was the impetus for me a year ago, saying, you know, I'm going to rebuild my class that teaches 0 to 1 startup building, all based around prompts. And so that's what I ended up doing. So you're going to hear about that experience, and you're going to hear about the experience in me building a new class I'm teaching this coming spring as well, that's based around building your sales funnel. So I'm an entrepreneur in residence. That means I don't have a PhD in anything except life and business. And so that's what my students tend to learn from. So that my journey started a year ago saying, I need to apply AI to my classroom. How do I integrate it with my traditional way of applying, or my traditional classroom? And what I found was it would be information overload. So I went to a totally AI-based classroom. And the reason I did this was, and this is a great quote, it summarizes how I feel about the world right now. AI won't replace jobs. I think it will replace some, but I think the point here is that humans using AI will replace humans not using AI. And that, I think, was reflected in some of the other speakers' conversations. And so I wanted to look at AI from the point of view of how can I help my students deal with this reality? And I think the tools that other speakers have talked about, especially the one Peter talked about, are awesome tools when you have high confidence in the tool maker and their skill set. When you're not sure about the tool maker and their skill set or their data, I still believe that creating prompts within ChatGPT raw is a great thing for students to learn. If the tool isn't there, it's too expensive, or they don't have high confidence. So this is where my motivation came from. So my previous class structure was, I am feeding information overload to those students. They all have questions popping up in their heads. There's very little time to give answers to those questions, and most students don't like asking them. And when they went away and tried to apply those concepts, there was confusion when trying to apply them. And so I really didn't like this challenge that it created for me of, I'm putting these students in this position of being confused. So the way that my classrooms work now is I create, in one case, a book, in the other case, guides that are full of prompts. And those prompts, what I have found is when they're doing homework using those prompts, it significantly reduces the information overload. Before, I would ask them to read a book, you know, a chapter of a book, and they had to read the whole book, but they didn't really know what it was I wanted them to focus on in that chapter. Now, by giving them specific prompts of what to learn, they know exactly what it is I want them to focus on. So the volume of information has gone down. And if they get confused in that moment, they can ask questions. So they're using this prompt, they get information out, they're not quite sure what it means. I don't know what these words mean. They can ask context-specific questions. And it turns out by modifying prompts, which they also do during homework, to match their particular situation, they're learning how to get context-specific advice for what they're doing. So let's say that you're trying to come up with, what's my lead gen technique going to be for this type of startup? They can describe their startup and then get very specific advice for their startup in the moment. The other thing it can do in the moment is, I'm a college student. I only have 30 minutes to work on this. Give me the steps, the 5 steps I should go through to accomplish this task in the 30 minutes that I have, as opposed to a lot of times you'll get 15 steps, something that would take weeks or months to execute on. So it's very good at doing that. They don't know enough to ask those prompts, so that's why I give them the prompts. And now my classroom is, they come into the classroom and they are asking questions about applying it because they're trying to apply concepts in the classroom that they learned through this homework assignment. So that's what it looks like now. And it feels completely different. My students come into the class ready to apply the knowledge they've acquired by using AI prompts that I gave them to use. And why do I believe so heavily in prompts? Conversations are the natural way to learn and ask questions. We're having essentially a one-sided conversation now, but that's how people have learned throughout history, is get in the group, discuss something, questions come up, and answers happen. And so by allowing the student to have a conversation and have, in the privacy of their own dorm room, say, I don't understand, give me more information, or is this correct? It allows them in that moment when the confusion happens to get a better understanding of what's going on. So I also believe that the impact you can have as a teacher expands greatly if you are the one that develops the prompts based on your expertise. You're creating a collection of prompts that create a collection of outputs to that student that sets them up for learning exactly what it is that you want to learn. And what I believe that causes to happen is you give customized guidance at scale. Now, I'll talk a little bit about my decision about not creating my own GPT. I have, 30 some years of experience in 6 different startups. I've been advising over 100 startups for the last 8 years. So one might claim I'm highly qualified to tell people how to build their startups. But my knowledge of the world sits inside this box. And GPT's knowledge of the world is much broader than that. So if I just put my knowledge into a GPT, and that's all the students ever have access to, they're missing out on all those different opinions that other people have about how to build startups. So that's the fundamental choice I made of not putting my knowledge into that GPT. All right, so my students have AI-based resources now. They have in one class a book called Launch. It's a 14-chapter book, 10 chapters of every step of building your startup, 4 chapters on what tests you need to do to see where you're at in your startup. And I will show you what that book looks like, what the style of that book is. In this new class, it'll be based on WISE guides that I've created. These are startup guides for topic-specific things like, how do I create the questions for a problem interview? Or how do I analyze the transcript of a problem interview? Very topic-specific guides. So the book, here's what a typical chapter looks like. There's a section at the top, which I wrote all of this, why you perform this step and what you need to know before you begin. And that's what I quiz the students on as homework quizzes. Then there's a practice where I describe a startup, and these are all prompts, and it's a practice of how to describe your market. So they're using a startup I've created and practicing, entering prompts unmodified. And then in a different homework, they do the do part where they modify those same prompts, and then they get their output and they save that away. And I tell them, here's what you need to save away. Here's what's important about what came out of those prompts. And the prompts that I deliver to them are in the form of groups. The groups perform a function, how to describe your target market using personas. B2B product persona example, B2C product persona examples. So these groups of prompts are designed to communicate these basic ideas I want them to learn. And here's what a prompt group looks like. These are the prompts they're going to put in. And they're very much tried to be in the mind of a student or the founder. I'm a first-time founder. What are the things I should clearly define about my idea before I start building my startup? Information overload can happen. This seems pretty overwhelming. Give me the top 3 things. What should I focus on in defining in the first 2 weeks of my startup? So getting very precise about the type of information you're looking for from these prompts, as opposed to define my target market using personas as the main prompt. I don't work that way. Very detailed prompts, very specific. All right, so I inherited this class from a woman named Jan Davis. She had taught it for 3 years. I've now taught it for 5. 4 of those years were the typical style. At the end of the class, we got a panel of angel investors, and they're looking at all these 8 different teams' investor presentations. And Jan is one of those angel investors now. She's one of those panelists, and she thought that across the board, all these startups were better formed at the end of this AI semester than any other semester. And it wasn't me. I'm the same person. It was the quality of the information they got delivered to them when they needed it was my thesis. All right, so that's Econ 327004. That's 0 to 1 building your startup. The WISE guides are different. The WISE guides are topic specific. And the first application of a WISE guide was how to create a pitch deck. I come in as a guest speaker at NC State University, and in 50 minutes, the students go from never having created a pitch deck to having a first version of their pitch deck, including all the speaker notes, the actual things they should say during each slide. And the way that that is created is describing your startup in 6 sentences. And so it's prompts. They fill in information within those sentence structures and prompt structures, and out comes the information. And this is what those prompts look like. This is the basics. So what I'm doing here is both teaching the student, but also creating context in the ChatGPT conversation of what's important to me as an expert that ChatGPT think about, while helping the student enter those specific prompts for their ideas. So this is the structure of a guide. And then there are multiple prompts before this one, but this is the final prompt for each of the slides you just created, because we've been working on different slides. I want you to reduce the number of words on each slide, create the speaker notes, make sure you cover all the recommendations you have given, create a final version that includes these 4 things, and the speaker note should be exactly the script to say for each slide. And this, I've been doing this now for 3 different classes for Chris Little at NC State, and his belief is these are the best pitches his students have ever created. And I think the net of this is avoiding information overload, providing too much information to the student, and then having them try and filter out what's most important. I think the prompts really get them focused on what is most important. So here's my summary from a student's perspective, and I got this from my TA or a student from last semester. She's now my TA for next semester. Traditional teaching is classroom delivers information, and it's the same for all students. And I think one of the other speakers talked about customization. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I want to leave you with is the classroom can deliver experiences now after having given the student customized information for their own project or what they're working on specifically. The challenges I've seen are they haven't internalized yet that they are entering an AI-based work world. Other speakers have talked about this. I 100% believe this. Seeing the long-term value of AI-based learning, their brain isn't ready for that yet. That, a lot of their benefit to their employer is going to be based on how they can leverage AI. And then learning to ask good questions of AI. They are not there yet. And then avoiding information overload on what comes out. So a lot of the prompts that I put in are formatting instructions. Give me the top 3 things. Put the output in a table format. Trying to get the information in a consumable size. From my perspective, traditional teaching was high upfront investment in designing courses, picking the right materials, trying to identify what things to focus on, creating quizzes and tests, and they were very hard to keep up to date. In AI teaching, it significantly reduces my investment. In this new class I'm creating, I've gone through 10 different variations of syllabi ideation already in about an hour. And the content remains up to date. So that's my perspective. The challenges I see are, what is the professor's role in an AI world where knowledge, I think, is a commodity? Getting access to the knowledge doesn't require a professor anymore. Accepting that knowledge delivery via lectures is less efficient than having the student experience that and be able to ask questions through prompting. and then redefining the classroom to applying knowledge effectively rather than testing, did they understand the knowledge I delivered to them? And concerns I've heard professors talk about are we being replaced? And my belief is professors are the key to quality prompts, and prompts only get you to 80% understanding of a concept. To get to 90, 95, 100, you've got to talk to experienced people and you've got to try things. And that's, I think, the key role of professors. And the cheating part, I now know students are learning when they type in something in ChatGPT. I don't consider them to be cheating. I do put walls around it for different things. And I can detect I think I can detect if they're cheating. But one of the big things is hallucinations. Prompt quality drives AI output. So vague input on your prompt gives you vague or hallucinated output. And there's a question that comes up every now and then about $20 a month for my class. And I say, it's not just for my class, and it's learning how to use this tool for life. So that's been my experience in doing AI classroom. And I'll bring it back to you, Jai.
Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing all those wonderful prompts that you have put together, and also the thoughts from students and also professors. So we're getting a diverse kind of opinions from different stakeholders here. Now, I want to thank our speakers and thank you all the participants for coming. We still have some time until 10:30, so we can take some questions. I see great discussions in the chat box. And you can also, I think there's a function where you can raise your hand if you want to directly voice your questions so our speakers can address them. Let's see if we have it.
Just on, I'd like to hear also from Kevin on this, but certainly working with, working professionals, teaching them strategy where you want them to do applications back to their company will have policies on what tools they can use or not. So there's, Kevin, there's like what the reality is, but also there's what corporate is saying. I see you nodding.
Great.
Actually, just real quick, Jai, I would say if you're teaching students to use AI who are about to graduate, you definitely want to teach them why corporations have these type of policies so they don't get fired. We actually literally had this come up with a student who went on an internship and put like proprietary custom data into a system that was not closed. There are very easy ways to solve this problem. It's not actually a major problem as long as they know what to do.
Yeah, that's part of what you teach. Also, I mean, even the regulatory environment is hard. Like in Europe, using AI to evaluate people can be problematic. You say all those great things, Maciek, about role plays. I love that. But there are certain jurisdictions where if AI causes emotions, you're liable to fines. So I would just say it's amazing, but it's going to be complicated, the rollout. There's lots to teach.
Awesome. Yeah, we don't have any hands up, but we have some great questions in the chat box. And I think the question that we haven't got any responses to is a question from Philip B, particularly regarding like sensitive data use, especially when they're doing like capstone project, right? Like if they use generative AI. I mean, I don't know whether Philip, you want to elaborate on the question. I think you can unmute, hopefully. But if not, all the speakers, please feel free to chime in here in terms of what you're thinking. So I'm going to read his question here, more specifically for students who are working on strategy capstone projects in the community, where they're often handling sensitive client data on customers, employees, and so on. Do you put restrictions on how they can use AI? What's kind of the general thoughts here?
So I was trying to touch on that. So sometimes, again, there's your own policies, but there's also, they should definitely check if they're using any company data, they have to check on what the company policies are. Again, some of the, you have to be careful with, if you just go to a raw GPT chat from OpenAI, if you haven't set things up correctly, they will train on what you put in. Usually the terms and conditions when you've got API calls are different. Yeah. Also, even for faculty, like I was visiting, like even putting student information into the AI may not be compliant with your university policies. So there's lots of stuff to be checked.
Yeah, but I also wanted to add that actually many of these problems arise because of just taking silly shortcuts, right? So why would you dump a lot of data into GPT, which is not a system to handle information and look for insights? You probably want to use some machine learning tools, and then the GPT can give you code, in Python, and help you kind of get to a spot when you can actually get insights from the data in your own environment without ever reaching it. So people very often put information because they don't know what they're doing. They're just like, oh, I need an answer. So dump a bunch of information and just press enter. And I think if you disassemble the strategic decision process or any sort of problem solving into its components, right? So I'm going to analyze the environment, or if I want to craft an email, about employee being, you can use Jane Smith, right? I mean, you can use a lot of information just kind of for this particular step, but usually when people want to get everything done in GPT because it's easy and they're lazy, then a lot of the problems actually arise there. I mean, we should be careful, and there's a lot of stuff that that we need to take care of. But I've noticed that a lot of this is just really silly, not understanding what the systems are made for and what I can get.
Yeah,
I'll give a counter example. And this is just to, I think, continue the conversation. But if you think about the train of information flow of entering, let's say, confidential information into an AI tool, if OpenAI doesn't directly share that prompt with other people, that information is being absorbed into a system that Kevin very clearly identified as it's using statistical analysis to plug in information. So the information doesn't come out directly as the content that you entered in. And I think people are going to become more and more comfortable with that over time. The other thing I do is I teach people to turn on private ChatGPT chats. And now you have to have confidence that OpenAI is going to follow the rules of which they said they would not share that information. Yeah. But I don't believe, especially my students, aren't equipped to create their own machine learning models and things like that. They don't have time building a startup over the course of the semester to do that.
If I can get on, Michael posted a question about faculty incentives. It's super interesting. Now, to some extent, as we heard, some of the use of these tools will save you time, right? So there is some alignment. But at the same time, we have to be, we've been in an industry where teaching has been very stable, and the culture has largely, as you say, Michael, weighted things towards research. If we're in a period where teaching needs to be reinvented, it's not going to be just at the individual faculty level. There's going to be activity also at the school level to make sense of this. But there's a real tension there, and it'll be interesting to see whether this is what we teach, right? Can existing organizations change to seize the opportunity, or will they be so slow that despite the incredible resource base of today's business schools, startups will start eating our lunch? So, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe if I can follow up on Michael's question. So cheating always comes up as people's first concern. I remember on the day ChatGPT came out, I wrote a thing online about how basically you can get a B+ in effectively any undergraduate class using generative AI these days, minimum. And it was covered in like the Daily Mail. that's what people are most concerned about. And like it's reasonable because I think your average colleague does not know what generative AI can do and how it works. And so they don't understand just how easy it is for most of their assignments to be done. So like anything you're giving as a take-home assignment in a traditional class is very, very easy to do with generative AI. And so like, how do we change that? Like, even if you don't want your teaching to be better, you essentially have to change the assignments and the evaluation because it's just super, super easy for people to cheat these days. So I think what we're going to do is the way we change how we run the classroom to make the education better, as you saw from some of the talks today, is part and parcel of how we're changing how we evaluate students on their work. Because asking people to like remember things that I gave them in documents and then recite them again on an assignment is like trivial. for generative AI. There's no point asking people to do that. And it's not useful for their career to learn how to do that. So how do you get people to learn stuff under that environment? Someone asked, like, what rules do you set in your class? The rule I set for generative AI is that you can use it however you would use your smart classmate. I wouldn't want you to like not have your A classmate help you learn something. That doesn't make any sense. But I also don't want the A classmate to do your assignment for you. And so, because then you don't learn anything in the long run. We have lots of good data on how generative AI can be used in this way. So like if a generative AI system does not try to guide in a tutorial type way, actually students wind up learning less in the long run from your class. So that's another reason where you want to build tools on top, similar to all the ones you've seen today, actually, on top of these foundation models, rather than point students toward the foundation models. Because what's going to happen then is they're just going to do their homework using these models. It's going to be good enough, and they're not actually going to learn anything in your class. And what's worse, they're going to learn effectively the average of all content on the internet, which I hope for everyone here is not what you're trying to teach them in your class anyway. So we have no choice but to make the kind of changes Peter mentions.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, one thing that I changed about the evaluations is, I mean, so take home evaluations with the class discussion is a great way to flag some of the main mistakes people do by basically shortcutting the process, using sort of the AI not as a booster, but kind of as a as a substitute. And what we do actually at the last one, we have sort of a Shark Tank type of a presentation session with really 5 minutes per team. They need to present their program, but then I bring people, usually partners from top consulting firms. We sit together in the jury, and then we grill the team. How did you come up with this number? What are the assumptions behind this? And it very quickly reveals if they have actually done the analysis and used the tool just to kind of, boost and summarize and synthesize, or had they really just used it as kind of give me the answer and give me some kind of cover, and I don't really understand what I've done or how this industry works. And I also think with tools like with sort of Peter's, going behind, just really getting from the detail to the answer is really the key, so that they use the AI to get them from the detail to the realization, rather than find some kind of a BS answer and then try to come up with with trumped up evidence for being correct.
Yeah, that same model I use in every class. That has become the test of whether they understood the homework, is they have to stand up and talk about what they did and why they did it that way, which was much harder to do in the traditional way of teaching.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing your thoughts and tips for addressing these critical questions. And thank you all for the great discussion today. Well, we are to an end. And again, thanks to our panelists for making the time. Thank you all for the participants. We will be sending the recording for today's session to everyone who has registered. So hopefully you can kind of also go over what we have presented, right? And if you want to kind of reach out to any of the speakers for specific tools, insights, and just chatting more to share thoughts, please feel free to do so. And we're all looking forward to a continued discussion, and hopefully we'll see more development in the field. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.